Hi there, I'm Derek Ashmore from Asparagus Consulting. Today we're looking at comparing AI-assisted coding platforms such as Cursor and GitHub Copilot. As a DevOps professional, I care about my productivity more than anything else. The quality of code that I produce is part of that. I can read generic reviews, head-to-head comparisons between coding platforms, but to be honest, that's too abstract for me. I care about how these platforms impact my productivity personally. I don't care about anything else. Anything else is noise. So how do I understand the productivity I get from one platform versus another? Typically, I compare IDEs using typical coding tasks for me. I implement these tasks on multiple tools. I note the results and compare what my experience was with one tool versus another. This is subjective, but it does give me insight into the productivity impact for me personally. Today, I'm going to illustrate that process using the Cursor IDE and GitHub Copilot IDE under VS Code. And that's our topic for today. If you like what you see, please click like and subscribe. Let's get started. In this segment, we're going to create some scripts, which is a common activity for DevOps professionals. And essentially, as an example, we're going to have AI help us create a script that will create a storage account for use as a backend state storage for Azure-related Terraform configurations. Basically, I'm going to use the Cursor IDE for this exercise. We're going to create that script in a Bash dialect, a PowerShell script dialect, and also a Windows command style dialect. I don't have any religious affiliations to any one of those dialects. They will all work. But I want to demonstrate the capabilities of Cursor AI with regards to all those types of scripting languages. So let's get started. Actually, first of all, I am using the Claude 3.5 Sonnet LLM. Claude 3.7 is out. And my knee-jerk reaction when that came out was to use it, and I tried it out for a few things, and I find myself drifting back to Claude 3.5. And basically, I've found Claude 3.5 to be a little bit better for the kinds of things that I tend to do. Everything that we're doing today will be published on GitHub, and when we publish this episode, I'll make sure that there's a link to the repo and the branch that we're using, which is Scripting Cursor Demo, so that you can have the results of our activities today. So let's start. Basically, what I've done is I've opened up a bash script file, and what I'm going to do is ask Cursor to write a bash script that uses the Azure client to set up a storage account, uses a Terraform backend. So there it goes. It is telling us what it's going to do. It's going to create a resource group, do a storage account, create a container for the Terraform state, and it gives us a whole lot of verbiage explaining what it intends to do on the right-hand side. I usually find it quicker to just read the code that it generated, and we'll accept it in a minute, but it looks like what it's doing is it's assuming a resource group name, It's assuming the storage account name. It's assuming a container name and a location. Uh, and I don't mind some of those being defaults, but we're going to change that here in a minute. I think it's smarter and makes the script more versatile if we accept those as arguments rather than assuming them up front. But let's take a look at what it generated. Basically, it created a resource group. It created the storage account. It assumed the SKU, which is local redundancy only, which is probably good enough for these services. Sometimes I'll want geo-replication, but we don't need to get bogged down by that today. It retrieves the storage account key for the account that it generated. Then it uses that key to create the blob container, and then it echoes out some information that somebody is going to need if they're going to use this in a Terraform backend configuration for Azure. And this sounds like it's very close to what I asked, so I'm going to just accept that. However, let's ask for some changes. I don't like the fact that these variables, the resource group is assumed, the storage account is has the date in it. Basically, I prefer that my storage accounts have a little bit better naming convention than that. And I don't mind that the container name defaults, but I want to be able to override that. And I don't mind that the location defaults, but I want to be able to override that. So let's ask it to make these variables as arguments. Okay, so let's have it make these variables arguments instead, and let's let it make the container name and the location default. So let's see what it does. All right, in characteristic fashion, it shows me what it adds and what it subtracts. What it adds is in green, what it subtracts is in red. So it took out the variables for resource group name and storage account. It provided some instructions, which is nice for the user, which tells them what their options are, which is nice. It let the container name and location default, just like I asked it to. It basically put in logic to accept the resource group name and the storage account name as arguments. And it looks like these are named arguments, not positional arguments, which is nice. It's something I might not have taken the trouble to do if I were coding this by hand. And it basically does the bash logic to figure that out right up front. And it did what I asked it to as far as making sure that the resource group name and the storage account name are required. Then it goes on to do. The rest of this is unchanged. Very nice. That is exactly what I expected it, or what I asked it to do. Version of the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and start a new chat. And let's go ahead and type this in. And I'm basically asking it to create a PowerShell script that does the same thing and make it have the same capabilities that the bash script has. So let's see if it copies the instruction for making those for variables arguments or parameters. Let's see if it copied all of that, and it is still going. And it gives me instructions on how I use it. But let's take a look at what it did. It basically is accepting parameters for the resource group name, the storage account name, the location, and the container name. And it is making those mandatory. So it didn't appear to make the location and the container name optional, at least not at first glance. It's going to do a check to see if the Azure CLI is actually present, which is interesting. That's good. I didn't ask it to do that. It's basically doing literally what I asked. But if we were really doing this in PowerShell, what we would do is basically have it use the PowerShell extensions. So let's do this. So basically, I'm going to ask it to rewrite what it did. Incidentally, its use of the Azure AI or the Azure CLI is exactly what I asked it to do. So that is an error on my part. That is not an error on Claude's part. So let's take a look at what it's doing. It is basically seeing if the Azure PowerShell modules are installed. If not, it'll ask you to install them. It'll test for login and do the same thing it did before, and it'll error out if it doesn't find what it needs to process. It'll create the Azure group using the Azure PowerShell modules, not the Azure CLI, which is good. It is using the PowerShell modules to create the storage account. It did assume the SKU name and whatnot, and it's getting the storage key, and it's basically creating the blob container that is necessary for state, and it's giving me instructions at the end. So I am going to accept all that. And the thing that it didn't do is it didn't make the location and in the container name optional, which is what we did in the bash version of this. So it's giving me a lot of verbiage on the right-hand side, but we don't care about that. I'm looking at the code changes. It made these parameters default, and it didn't have to change anything else. So that's exactly what I asked for. So is the last part of this exercise. Let's go ahead and do the Windows command file for the Azure CLI. So let's start a different chat. Basically, what I'm going to do is instruct it to make a Windows command. It's asking me to share the original bash script. So let's files and folders. That's shared. Okay. Easy enough. So I shared the bash script, and it is doing what I asked. Okay, it appears to be done. It is defaulting the container name and the location. It has a function to display usage for the users, which is nice. It basically parses the arguments, and this is something I might not have gone to the trouble to do if I were coding this the old-fashioned way and doing it manually. It is checking for the error level after the Azure group create. It's doing the storage account, checking the error level. Basically looking up the storage account key so that it can create the container for state, and it essentially did that, and it essentially is displaying information that somebody would need to use the storage account and a Terraform configuration just like the bash script did. Okay, we're going to take a small break, and when we come back, we're going to repeat this exercise, and this time we're going to use the GitHub Copilot product under Visual Studio Code instead of Cursor, and I will commit these to Git and publish the reference so that you can look at the code and further examine it. Okay, let's do a quick test of the scripts that we generated out of Cursor. And for to be brief, I'm just going to test the bash script. That said, in reality, in the real world, would test all three. Having said that, you might recall that we wrote the script so that the resource group name and the storage account name arguments are required, and it's supposed to error out if it doesn't get that. So let's start out with a negative test. Here's my Ubuntu terminal. And executing the script without the resource group name and storage account name did error out in the manner that we expected it to. That did what it was supposed to do. So let's go ahead and execute it with the arguments it needs, and let's see how well it does. It created the resource group. It is creating the storage account. We will come back after this finishes. And it is finished. It appeared to complete without error. And it did basically appeared to do, from an execution standpoint, we appeared to have a clean execution. What I will do is come back with a Azure portal, and we'll take a look at how this, whether what it looks like on the Azure side. Okay, we're back, and this is the Azure portal. It is displaying the resource group name, that resource group that we created with the script. Here is our storage account, and within that storage account, if we look at the containers within it, it has the default TF state container, just like we coded the script to provide. And the location is actually east-west, just like it's supposed to be. So that script appeared to work. There are several things I liked about my Cursor experience. I liked the named parameters that Cursor created in the scripts that it coded for me without me asking for it. From a user perspective, executing and debugging scripts using named parameters is easier to read. Typically, I'll call these scripts from pipelines or other scripts. Named parameters are easy to debug too, and that just adds value to anybody who uses the script that we're writing today. If I were coding these scripts manually, I might use positional parameters instead, just to be lazy. They're quicker to code, less typing. I look at this as a case where Cursor enhanced the quality of my code output in a way that I might not have otherwise. I don't like the verbose explanations of what Cursor gives me after it generates code. I do see value for those who are less experienced. I personally skip over those verbose explanations. I simply don't need them. I like the ability in Cursor to refer to my previous work as part of the instructions I give. Cursor seems to readily include context in a convenient way. If I want to change topics and clear context, I simply start a new chat. Now, let's do the same scripting tasks with GitHub Copilot. Okay, we're back. You are looking at Visual Studio Code with Copilot installed. We're going to do an exercise where Copilot is going to help us write some scripts to do to create an Azure storage account to use as a backend for Terraform. And other notes, we are set up to go with Copilot. I'm using the default GPT 4.0 model backing it. There are other model choices now in preview, but we're going to go with the default that most people seem to use for now. And we're going to start just a level set. We're going to generate a script in 3 dialects. The first will be Bash. So we're going to write a Bash script, and I'm going to ask it to write a Bash script that uses the Azure CLI to set up a storage account to use as a Terraform backend. So let's see what it does. And that was fairly nice and fairly quick. Basically, it populated our Bash script. It is assuming a resource group name and storage account name and container. It did not request a location, but let's see what it does. It looks like location is hard-coded. It basically creates a resource group. It basically creates the storage account name. hard coding the location, which we're going to change. It creates a container in the storage account. So it is doing that based on the variables that it assumed at the front. We're going to change that to. It looks like it grabs the account key for the storage account, but then it doesn't do anything with it other than display it. And usually the reason you would need the account key is if you're going to use it for the storage container create. I don't see the value in getting the key. I don't know. I don't believe that the key would strictly be necessary for the storage container create. So I don't see the reason why we would need the account key. And then it basically echoes out the information it used, including the account key, which generally you don't want to display. That's usually considered a secret. Let's make some changes. I want it to make these variables as parameters, and I want it's okay to default the container name. I also want to be able to pass in the location as a parameter. I don't necessarily want to hard code it. So let's go ahead and ask for some changes here. Let's see what it does. Okay, so basically it made these positional parameters, which I guess is okay. It's what I would have done if I were coding this manually. It is nice enough to give us usage. It's not quite as nice as making the variables named parameters, but that's okay. That will work. At least it gives the user instructions. It goes ahead and creates resource group. It goes ahead and creates the storage account. It creates the container. I'm going to ask it to just remove the account key generation and display because we don't need that. And one of the things that would be nice for a user of this script to have is display instructions on how to include those Azure backend storage account in their Terraform configurations. Let's see if it can do that. Okay. It appeared to do that. I am relatively happy with this, and I'm going to keep all these. And we are done, and it looks like it wants me to save the file, and that's okay. What we're going to do is let's go ahead and create a PowerShell. And yes, I know my PowerShell's out of date, but we're not going to worry about that right now. And let's go ahead and repeat our instruction. And that's ask it to refer to what we did in the bash script to see if it can copy our instructions from that. It looks like it went ahead and added the parameters as like we did in the bash script. It did the AZ. It's using the Azure CLI. It is doing the lookup for the storage account key because in this situation it thinks that it needs that for the container create, and it very well might. The bash script might error out. And what I usually do is run the scripts before releasing them. But at this point, what I want the PowerShell script to do is I want it to use the Azure PowerShell modules, not the Azure CLI. This might have been an instruction error on my part because I told it explicitly to use the bash script as a model, which used the Azure CLI. So that's changed this in a couple of ways. Let's tell it to use the Azure PowerShell modules instead of the CLI. I'm just now noticing that it didn't give us our instructions as we did in the bash script, but we can ask for that again. Okay, so unlike Cursor, it's not showing me what it's changing. Maybe that's because I didn't say keep it. So let's go ahead and say keep it, and I want to change a couple of other things. Let's add instructions on how to use it as a Terraform backend. Okay, so apparently I should have put keep, because what it did this time is it showed us what it added. It basically is putting some similar instruction. All right, so I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to let's do the Windows Azure CLI command file. So let's go ahead and I'm going to say we're done with that one. We are on this one now. Let's go ahead and ask it to write a Windows command that does the same thing as the bash script. Now, this appears to have gone in a weird direction. It is doing something completely different. Let's undo this. And I think what we're going to do is it got confused. We're going to start with our original command and all right, and so I'm going to give it the original command. I'm going to tell it to use the same features as backend setup.sh. So I'm going to give it a explicit file name. We are going to undo this. I screwed up. What I really wanted to do is, let's go ahead and try this again. What I really wanted to do, instead of the PowerShell, Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So that really wasn't a Copilot error. That was my user error. So now that I have done that, it has gone ahead and it did when I asked. It did not copy, and I didn't ask it to. This is another user error. I should have asked it to replicate the features in backend setup.sh. So let's see if it can copy the features that we already specified. And I didn't keep it, so it's not showing us exactly what it's doing. But let's just take it that we're going to have to take this from ground zero. It's not going to remember our previous conversation, and that might have been a new or an error on my part. Let's go ahead and tell it to make okay, it's making the all right. In this case, since I kept the previous version, it's showing me what it's changing. It's removing the variable declarations. It's assuming that these are positional parameters and defaulting if it's not provided. And basically, the fact that it's positional actually is going to make this harder to use, because you would have to provide a container name if you wanted to. Well, I guess not. Yeah, I guess that's kind of clunky. Named parameters would probably be better. We could ask for that. Let's say I don't think that in this version we need the account key generation. It may prove out when I go run one of these to test it out that the storage container create actually needs the account key, but for right now, let's assume that we don't need it, because I actually don't want to display it at any rate. All right, so it did that. Let's keep that. Let's ask it to add instructions to use the storage account as a terrible state. Okay, and it did that. What we will do is I will check this into GitHub and put a link to what we've done here today in the description for the video below, and we will be right back for some summary thoughts. There are several things I liked about GitHub Copilot and a few things I didn't like. I like the fact that Copilot doesn't give me verbose explanations to describe the code it generated. I can always ask for those explanations if I want them, but I rarely want them. Normally, I have no use for that. I didn't like Copilot's display of the storage access key. That's a security risk, and it's completely unnecessary. Should the script be run in pipelines, it's very possible that key would get displayed in the logs for all to see, And with that key, anybody can essentially access that storage account. Less experienced people might not have spotted the vulnerability. I wish Copilot had used named parameters instead of the positional parameters it did use. I could have asked for named parameters. That is a personal preference on my part. I didn't because I didn't ask for it in the cursor test. I consider named parameters easier to maintain and debug. I wish Copilot had a better ability to reference previous instructions that I've given it. In the flow of developing something, I really don't like to have to repeat myself. It's an inconvenience for me. Yes, for me personally, I found Cursor more productive than Copilot in this test. It's not the only test I do when I compare IDEs, but with this test, I definitely found Cursor more productive. I basically had to give Copilot about twice the number of instructions that I had to give Cursor. And Cursor by default gave me a superior coding output product, in my opinion. Test cases that you use will be different. You likely will have other everyday use cases in mind. The point of this exercise is to evaluate what works for you personally. Whether Copilot or Cursor won this round for me is incidental. The code developed today is in a public repository. I'll include information about where to find it in the description below. If you liked what you saw today, please click like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.